And I said, we know something's wrong. We don't know what, could the doctor just call her back and say, Dorothy, you had some concerns. I was talking to some colleagues. There's some tests we could do. I mean, it could have been handled really easily.
I see.
But not. The nurse calls her the next day and says, your daughter and your family all think you have Alzheimer's disease.
Oh,
my mom went hysterical, locked herself in the bathroom. My dad, who could handle the worst storm ever, was like a rubber chicken sitting on the couch. He was just drained.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I interview thoughtful, inspiring, and influential guests who are making their mark on the world and contributing to the common good. Making your mark, big or small, is creating a legacy, and it's one of the proven ways we can age with vibrance and energy. And Zestful Aging Podcast is my legacy. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist and fellow Zestful Ager. Our lovely music is courtesy of Judy Banker, who is a previous guest on Zestful Aging. Find out more about her on judybanker.com. And to find out more about this podcast, my web courses, and other offerings, hop on over to zestfulaging.com. Well, I've got my little loyal Jack Russell Sparky right by my side. He's anticipating his walk. So let's begin. Today we're speaking with Lori LeBay, who is an international icon in the field of dementia. She's been recognized by Oprah as a health hero, AARP as a disruptor and inspiring leader, Maria Shriver as an architect of change, and by Dr. Oz as the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's. Welcome to the show, Lori.
Well, thanks for having me on, Nicole. I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. You got some heavy hitters here endorsing you.
Yeah, they just kind of came out of the blue, I wasn't chasing them at all, It's just like, wow.
Oh, that's a great way to have it go, I think, is that people find you.
Yeah, well, I think when you talk with an authentic heart, people are just drawn to that because we don't see or hear a lot of that nowadays. Everyone's, kind of, trying to meet everybody else's needs and, not be judged and fit in with the crowd. And I just kind of say what it is, the good, the bad, or the ugly, and always looking forward on how do we improve the situation, and then share knowledge. When I found that sweet spot, how do you get there? So.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying, we'll get into this, is that this is a personal project for you, and you're bringing your whole self, your whole experience to it. It's not just an academic project for you.
Oh, definitely. Very personal.
This is not your original career, so why don't we start with asking what led you to devote yourself to helping those with dementia and their caregivers?
Well, my mom lived with dementia for 30 years. And I can't tell you, way back when, she's been gone for 5 now, how many people have said, there's no way, that's impossible. Nobody lives that long. And we're hearing more and more nowadays that they're digging more, that people are living with it for a long period of time. My mom just happened to be ahead of the curve and very aware of what was going on. And, the first 10 years she was told by the doctors it was her hormones. And she would say, this ain't my girlfriend's hormones. And I mean, she knew it was different. And she was very open with my dad and myself about it. And, didn't really want to share because she was still working, and then got to the point where she just, she retired. She made it to retirement, but it was a struggle. Here's my mom having to carry around a 3-ring binder back and forth to work on how to do her job in case she got stalled. She could find her way through it. And so she had, she did all these adaptive little things to still be able to function and be part. So yeah, it was very personal.
And so what were the early signs that your mom was developing Alzheimer's?
Well, some of the normal forgetfulness, but then it got into other things. Like we would go over to the house and you couldn't turn the TV channel. It had to stay on channel 4. And we couldn't figure out why. And the guys were like, well, we want to watch a football game. And she's like, no, it had to stay on channel 4 all the time. And what we figured out was that's how she was telling time of day. Because programming didn't change like it does today. So she could tell by the newscasters if it was morning, afternoon, evening, or bedtime.
Was she able to articulate that, Lori? Did she say, this is the way I can tell time?
No. And we'd see her answer the phone maybe upside down or hear it ringing and sitting right next to it, not knowing to pick it up, or she threw like a TV dinner in the microwave and started a fire because she didn't take it out of the box.
Gaps.
Yep. Stop being able to do little mechanical things like how to use a vacuum or the dishwasher, the washer and dryer. Started to pull back. She stopped driving at night, she was very social. And so that was a big change. And then just started getting really quiet. She wasn't participating in conversations, and all those things I think were because she didn't want to make a mistake. She didn't want other people to think less of her.
She didn't want to essentially embarrass herself.
Yep. Or anyone she's with.
So was it somewhat of a relief when you had a name for these symptoms?
Well, yeah and no. We went through a real horrible time getting the diagnosis. And so, and it's sad because a lot of the diagnosis process still hasn't changed that significantly out there. So my mom, every Christmas we would go shopping at the mall, and all the girls would go, we'd buy all the gifts, and my mom would kind of give us money for the kids. And she said, you I'll pay for it. You get what they want from us, and then you can wrap it and we'll show up type thing. And this year she just sat in the mall, and she wouldn't come in the stores. And normally, you could blindfold my mom and give her a list and she'd come back with the stuff from her mall, And so that was really strange. And so my sister-in-laws and I knew something was up. We didn't know what. We were wondering, did she have a stroke? I talked with my dad that evening when we got back home, and he said, yeah, she was at the doctor 2 weeks ago for her physical, told him her memory was getting worse, and he just kind of poo-pooed it. And we need to call. And I said, well, go, Dad, give him a call. And he's like, I can't, because she'll pick up the other line, because that's when we had party lines in the house. Oh. And so he asked me to call. So I called. I explained to the nurse that my mom was just there. She was concerned about her memory. She thinks she has Alzheimer's, which was really weird 35 years ago to even use that word. I don't know where she even got that from. And but she was always adamant that's what it was. And the nurse is like, I can't talk to you. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You don't have to give me information. So don't be throwing HIPAA at me, but you can listen and you can take this down. And I said, we know something's wrong. We don't know what, could the doctor just call her back and say, Dorothy, you had some concerns. I was talking to some colleagues. There's some tests we could do. It could have been handled really easily.
I see.
But not. The nurse calls her the next day and says, your daughter and your family all think you have Alzheimer's disease.
Oh,
my mom went hysterical, locked herself in the bathroom. My dad, who could handle the worst storm ever, was like a rubber chicken sitting on the couch. He was just drained because he called me in to help. It took us like 2 hours to get her out of the bathroom. She was just devastated and crying, and we could hear bottles rattling, and she's pulling the toilet paper and just blowing her nose. It was horrific. And then when she came out, I said, Mom, first of all, I didn't say that. You're the one that said that. I said, we called the doctor because you were very different yesterday, and we want to help you find out what's wrong. And we don't know if it's Alzheimer's. but let's go in. And, finally she agreed to go in for an appointment. And I said, worst case it is, but then we've named it and we can do something. And maybe it's not, maybe it's something else. And we'll deal with whatever that is, but we're here. And so then they brought her in, and all they did was the 10-question test. And she had a really good day. And she came out strutting like a peacock, and we couldn't talk about it after that. And she said, I gave them a couple of colors they didn't even know.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. So she aced, what was it, like a mini mental status exam?
Yeah. Who's the president? Name a couple. Yeah, it was just, and it wasn't, we were expecting more of a test. And then, later on, my dad got diagnosed with brain cancer, and she had definitely declined. And by this time, they were retired, and we thought we've got to do some more thorough testing. So then we talked to the doctor, and they did 2 half-day testings, which were horribly stressful and humiliating to her because she couldn't do them.
Oh, my
And then, about a month later, we get this letter in the mail going, oh, she's got the mentality of a 3-year-old. Don't let her out of your sight.
That's how it was handled?
That's how it was handled.
Oh.
And again, it has changed, but not in all areas. Some people are still not getting diagnosed; they're getting misdiagnosed, and it is a tricky disease to diagnose. But there aren't supports. There's no support for people. I mean, we didn't even get a number to the Alzheimer's Association. I mean, nothing.
Wow.
It's here's an appointment, get your affairs in order, and, we'll see you next time. Ching-a-ling. I mean, that's how you feel as a family member.
Oh, my goodness.
And a prescription. We got a prescription for Aricept, too.
Mm-hmm. So how did you went from, I think, a real estate agent? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep.
And so tell me about, for you, how you started transitioning into being this international icon in this field.
Well, it was actually prior to real estate, I was in healthcare. I worked in the group home industry with developmentally disabled. I got burnt out there. Got into real estate for who knows why. I'm a girl who follows my intuition. That's what I was told to do. Because I grew up in a neighborhood nobody ever moved. I think we had 2 families move, in the 18 years we lived in this neighborhood.
Wow.
I had never been in an open house. And as soon as I got my license and started, I identified the senior market. Well, back then, people were like, what are you talking about, senior market? I mean, it was very backwards. So I really worked hard at helping seniors, their families, and professionals work together, because the agents were always kind of looked at as the enemy. So I worked a lot with nursing homes. There weren't a ton of assisted livings back then. And
you're an innovator.
Yeah. And so I did a lot of training and stuff regarding that, and a lot of educational programs for people, trying to explain and taking the fear out of the move and the transition. And it was actually the senior community that encouraged me to get into this, because they said, Lori, you are so filled with hope. And everyone else is just spewing, doom and gloom. People need to hear that there's life with dementia and it can be okay. And so I honestly didn't know if they were tired of my talk about it or if they really believed it. But I thought, okay, I'll try a blog. And then I was shocked when people around the world were like resonating with stories and stuff that I was writing. And then from there, when I made the commitment to switch, I said, I'm not going to work in a broken system. I'm not going to be like everybody else, because it's not working. I don't want to be another it out there. And so I took an approach that was very different. And I took all of my savings, my retirement, everything, and committed to doing something different. Which was a real scary step, because I had just gotten divorced and stuff too. And it was like, okay, you're out on your own, baby.
How old were you at this point?
Well, this was about 10 years ago. So I was 50-ish.
You are a courageous woman. How did you find the courage? Because this is for people who are listening, who are in this age range, in our age range, and saying, I know I am here to do something bigger and better. but it's scary. How did you overcome that?
Well, it's Alzheimer's kind of picked me. I've always been a person since I've been a little girl, kind of an underdog. I've always fought for the underdog all of my life. I've been big about ethics and fairness, and that's just, I don't know, that's just kind of in me at my core soul. And so there really wasn't an alternative. If I felt so strongly about helping the next guy, then you have to take the risk. So for people listening, I would say, what brings you joy and what is pushing you that needs to be fixed? I mean, I truly believe we all have this power of one, and that we are much more influential and inspiring than we think we are, because everybody's story is fascinating. And how they go through life, what choices do you make? And, it's hard. And it's not like I haven't screamed at God and said, throw me a nugget or I'm done. I am out of here. And then it's like, ping, something drops in my email box, or boom, there's a check in the mail, or, but.
Yeah, or Oprah's naming you as a health hero, something like that.
Yeah. But it hasn't been without struggle and great sacrifice. And to this day, it's still, I still have to balance that out because I'm not making the money I was. But I also realize that I don't need all of those things that used to fill me. Now I have something else that fills me much fuller than material things, or going, to fancy places, or whatever it might be. It's so I'm very different in that way. But it feels good. It feels really, really good.
You are the definition of a zestful ager. I love that you're doing this magnificent project that's beneficial for others, which, as we know, is like the definition of aging well. And there's this parallel process of you're doing for others and you have done for yourself. At the very same time, you have chosen what matters to you.
Yeah. Well, one of the key questions that I learned to ask during this whole process is, what's the lesson? So when I felt really out of control, which was a lot of times dealing with my dad with brain cancer, my mom with dementia, you're trying to get a business off the ground, or even before I switched careers, raising a family, all of those things, we all get overwhelmed. Or anyways, everyone I've ever met who's honest says that they have those moments. And so what I found was that when I would stop spinning in minutia of, oh, woe is me, and I'm, what am I going to do, and how am I going to get everything done that needs to be done, and, plan A through H, which I don't really need, but I felt like I needed to have all those backups and stuff. When I stopped and asked one simple question, which was, what's the lesson? Mm-hmm. What the hell am I supposed to be learning from all of this? Mm-hmm. And if you truly believe, as I do, that we are here to learn, then what I found, and this was like just a slap in the face and going, well, why didn't anyone teach me this in school? But when I stopped spinning and asked that question, what's the lesson? I realized I wasn't looking for the right answer. I was just being absorbed by the chaos. And I was spinning in that tornado and getting sucked down the drain. But when I asked the question, it focused me on looking for an answer, and it would like always pop up, just bing, and it's like, how did I not see that before? This is a really cool thing. And maybe I couldn't fix it, but I could learn to adapt. I could learn to maybe avoid it next time. Or maybe I could, maybe it's something I could get rid of. But all of those things are lessons to be learned to not go down that drain hole.
So you're talking about a little bit, in my psychotherapy practice, I'll talk to clients about creating a pause and, the cliche of mindfulness now, but that's a version of it where you're pausing and detaching for a moment. Yep. Detaching from the cyclone, I think you called it, of, okay, wait a minute, this isn't personal. This isn't about me failing at, knowing how to do all this stuff. Let me step back for a moment and say, pause, what can I learn? Is that what you're describing?
Very much so. And it also, during that process, taught me, that I don't use the word failure anymore. I use the word progress and I don't use the word perfection because it only exists for a nanosecond and you can never totally replicate anything, I don't believe. You can get close and it can look similar, but the second you get compliant and think you got it figured out, something's going to happen and eventually it's going to change. So to keep your eye on the ball and just always have this sense of wanting to learn and asking people, is this still meeting your need? Do we need to change it up? And that way you're not offended when change comes. Like, I thrive on change. I love change. Because I believe change is a good thing. It's progressive. And even when I've had to learn some nasty lessons, along my life, which everyone goes through, if I can switch to an attitude of gratitude that I was now taught that lesson, but then on top of it, I have the ability to share that lesson, not be shamed by it, but share it with others. So they don't feel so isolated and alone, like they're the only ones going through something. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts I've been able to bring to, the Alzheimer's and dementia world is raising everyone's voice. I don't care if it's a person with dementia, it's a family member, if it's a researcher, it's a business, an author, singer, songwriter, advocate, it doesn't make any difference. Everybody has a voice and should be heard as long as it's done in a respectful fashion. And that's a pretty easy rule to hold to because people like to talk about what's important to them and it empowers them to go, oh, I am worthy. I do matter. What I'm doing makes a difference. And it's like every single one of us makes a difference.
Could you talk a little bit about this idea of changing the orientation from crisis to comfort? What does that mean, Lori?
Well, I think so many people in our family was in that route too. You hear the word Alzheimer's or dementia and you panic. And you panic when you don't even know it when all of a sudden you're a caregiver. Now, we don't panic when we become a parent. We're excited about that new role, but we really don't embrace, I think, the true totality of giving care. And I think the word caregiver has a negative connotation. It says you're giving everything away. You're not being refilled. And so just changing our verbiage to care partner or care companion now puts you in a relationship based format that says, whenever I give, I will always receive more. I mean, and anyone you ask who volunteers will tell you that, but it's one of those things that we don't consciously process. And so our expectation of being able to receive from someone we're caring for that's ill, it kind of gets kicked to the curb.
You're talking about transforming this into an opportunity.
Oh, definitely. The lessons, I can't even list the number of lessons, and they're life lessons, not just dementia lessons that my mom taught me. And I always thought I was a good person, but I think I'm a much better person. Am I perfect? Hell no. Will I ever be? I might have some good moments, but again, I don't want to rate myself. I have a signature story called Betty the Bald Chicken, which talks about choice. And, it's about this chicken. I'll give you the short version, but it's about this chicken that lives on this farm, and she's connected with family and community and everything is fun. And then all of a sudden she loses a feather and she doesn't know how it came out, but nobody notices. So she's not going to say anything. And then a few months later, she loses more feathers and she squawks out in pain and everybody looks at her and they're scared to death and they're pushing her away, and they're pulling their kids away from her, and it's just, and there's this fear in their eyes, and she feels this great shame. And so at that point, everyone, doesn't want anything to do with her. So she goes out to the outskirts of the farm, and she's crying, and she's going, I'm a good person. What I don't even know what's going on. Why does nobody want to be with me? Because isolation, when we are going through major change, is really scary. And a lot of people push away from us. Mm-hmm. And so she ends up tripping and falling off this cliff, and another group living in this big ravine catch her, and they nurse her back to health and ask her just to stay there. And she decides to stay there because there's nothing up in the barnyard anymore. And then she ends up getting sick a few years later, and the Carrying Corral decides somebody has to go up to the barnyard to tell everybody that Betty's dying, this chicken, and says, you have one last choice. What is it going to be? Are you going to continue to pity her and push her away? Or are you going to reconnect and value all she's been in your life? And I think, to me, this came to me as a dream, and I couldn't go back to sleep. But the theme of the story that I get from this is that we all have choices. And we've all been Betty probably multiple times in our lives where we felt really awkward. We haven't fit in. We've been shunned. We have all walked away from somebody in need because we didn't have the time, the energy, or the desire to help. And we've all been part of the Carrying Corral. And it doesn't make any difference who you've been in the past or who you are, even as you're listening to this. It's about who do you want to be in each and every moment given to you. You have a conscious choice to make. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make you a good or bad person. It just makes you who you are. But we always have an opportunity to change if we don't like being in that situation.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. You're talking about so many different levels of things, about like what dementia looks like, how it affects the family, but how it affects the care partner and how it changes their life and in some ways enriches their lives.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And when we're, one of the things too with all that I, teach and train on, it's a lot of times we blame the disease. If anything goes wrong, it's the disease. But if you sit back, if you take that pause you were talking about, hey, that person's always been like that. They've always done that. But now we're blaming it on the disease. And so we have to really set back. We also have to realize that as the disease progresses, and actually in everyday living too, over 3/4 of our communication is nonverbal. And yet our expectation for someone to speak in strung sentences together is, it goes through the roof. And they can't do it. And so then we're getting frustrated, and they're picking up on our body language. Mm-hmm. And then they mimic our frustration back to us, but they can't tell us that. And we've all experienced that, we might be at a party or in a meeting and everything's going real good. And then that one person walks in the door and everybody just gets on edge. And no words have been spoken.
Yes.
But there's that anticipation of, oh my gosh, we got to deal with this now. And sometimes we as care partners or friends or family or even professionals walk in with that element of ickiness that is red that we're trying to hide with our Stepford wife smile. Going, everything's fine. But the rest of our body language is going, not so much.
So yeah, it's so interesting. The theme of authenticity is really coming through here.
Yep.
Uh-huh. What's a typical sort of day or days like for you, Lori? I know you're in a lot of different things. What kinds of activities are you doing around dementia?
Well, I do a lot of things virtually. So I have a radio show called Alzheimer Speaks, where I interview people typically twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then I do a thing called Dementia Chats, which is a video group of people with dementia, and I facilitate a conversation. We pick a topic, and I do that about once a month now. And we were doing it twice a month, but it's so cool because all the people with dementia are becoming so active themselves, and they're busy in lives. I facilitate memory cafes. I do a lot of mentorships. I do consulting, and then I speak and train around the country and people go, who's your target? And from day one, it was kind of funny because like the National Speakers Association is like, you have to pick a lane. And I'm like, I can't, because we aren't going to fix this problem if we don't all talk. We're never going to make it better if we're not inclusive, because everybody impacts everyone else. Why is that so hard to figure out? That's how my brain works. And so I talk with families, I talk with maybe communities or clinics and hospitals, conferences, you name it. The only thing I really haven't done too much of is like one-on-one coaching, where I've had a lot of requests to do that, but I've always felt that I am drawn to a bigger platform, one that really just exposes the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because if we don't do that, we can't authentically really fix it or make it better. And it's never going to be fixable per se, but we can make it better, because every person living with this disease is different with it. Every care partner is different. Every environment is different. So what works one moment might not work another. And we have to get people to understand that's okay. That's okay. We change moods all day long, and so do they. And their symptoms, they say so often, which I find fascinating. They talk about how some categorize the symptoms 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 7. And they said no matter what scale you're using, most of them will tell you, if you ask, they go through all stages every day, but they just don't tell people because they don't want to scare them. But, you don't wake up in the morning and be tip-top, hey, this is the best day ever all day long. You can be in the car and someone cuts you off. So I think getting to the point of we are teaching people we are much more alike than different. And we can do that through so many different mediums, through blogs, through audio, through video, through different types of writing, in-person training. It's endless these days.
So you're really distinguishing between, well, not distinguishing, but you're saying it's not us and them, that it's more of a spectrum that we're all on of humanity.
Very much so. And like I said, these lessons that I've learned through this, they apply to my grandkids, my children, my friends, myself. It's about being kinder. It's about being less judgmental. It's about slowing down our pace. Really, what is the rush? What is the rush? And I've been that person in line going, oh my gosh, can't they count their money? What the heck? And then it's like, it's okay to help somebody.
It's acceptance. It's really acceptance of people who are not exactly what we maybe want or expect.
Yep. Well, I was at the bank the other day, and this has nothing to do with dementia, but it's just kind of that judgment and that drive to be fast and quick. And when I was at the bank, their computers were down, and it took forever to get. I had like 3 transactions, and they had to do it the old-fashioned way, and it was like 10 steps versus, one quick one. And this woman 3 times came up, are you done yet? Are you done yet? I said, ma'am, their computers are down. I said, I just brought mine in. Maybe it's my energy. And she's like, oh, don't give me that baloney. She was just so rude. And there were like 12 other people lined up too. But it was this, we have this urgency. We don't, we kind of need to get back to the Andy Griffith Show and a little more casual pace in life.
Mayberry.
Yeah. And connect with one another. Maybe bring a pie to your neighbor. We don't even know our neighbors anymore. Oh. So I think it's really about getting to know not only a person with dementia, but ourselves and others supporting them in a real fashion. People think that people with dementia even in the earlier stages, aren't competent to have conversations or shouldn't be included, or they might give the wrong answer. I mean, there's all these stigmas and stuff. And so, with this, what I think people have to learn is how much they can teach us if we ask. I mean, they're living it. We think we know, they're living it. So let's stop peeking through the window and get them engaged and have them help us help them and the whole trajectory of how we deal and support this disease. We've done it for heart disease. We've done it for cancer. We've done it for HIV. We've done it for so many things. And, here in the U.S., we've got, almost 6 million people that they know of, with dementia. But the actual world statistic is much larger. And people don't realize that, around the world, every 3 seconds, someone is being diagnosed and is developing this disease. And that number is huge. And, there's a movement called Dementia Friends and Dementia Friendly Communities, which I was lucky enough to kick off the first one in the U.S. We have to work together. We have to share knowledge and we have to collaborate. And there's so many beautiful resources that are free to people that people don't even know about. And that's my goal, is to connect people and give them hope.
And this inclusivity, is like we're all part of this circle and everyone's invited.
Yeah, well, exactly. And this isn't just families and medical professionals. This is restaurants and healthcare or fitness centers and banks and grocery stores and gas stations.
And apartment buildings.
Exactly. This is everybody. And for businesses listening, you have employees struggling with this. You need to support them. Otherwise, they're going to be sidetracked and not be able to focus on their job as good as you'd like. And there, like I said, there's so many resources out there. It's just absolutely incredible. So, I like to help anybody in any fashion I can. And, again, raise all voices, because I think there's so much that we can learn and so much that we can do together. And once we're able to take that fear away, and realize two things. We've been told dementia is not normal aging, but it is, as a society, a new normal we have to cope with.
I see. And so for the people listening and they're starting to notice changes that look like dementia, or someone that they love has gotten a diagnosis, what's the first thing you would recommend?
Well, it's always good to go to your doctor. There are tests that you can take on the internet, but I wouldn't recommend that you do that. And if your doctor's not getting you the answers, go in there and be prepared to ask for a referral to a neurologist who specializes in dementia, and so that you can dig deeper. The sooner you can find out, the better off you'll be in terms of how to deal with this, how to get your ducks in a row, how to learn to get connected socially. Memory cafes are a wonderful source for people, and we now have over 700 of them in the U.S., which
They're
just
cropping up all over.
I know, and it's I remember bringing the first one over years ago, and it was just a battle, because it was a different kind of support concept. And so you can go to memorycafedirectory.com, and there you'll be able to find what states and what cities have memory cafes, or if you're listening and you have one and you want to register it, Dave will register that for you for free, and he's now doing international memory cafes. He's loading those listings up as well, so there'll be one spot people can go to. But this is it's like a bowling league or a bridge club. You don't show up for the equipment, you show up for the camaraderie. And the other thing is, so often people worry about, what do I do? What do I say to somebody with dementia? Well, what do you say to your friends? You don't walk in with an agenda. You just have an authentic conversation. And that's what these groups are. And they have such intimate, strong conversations and relationships almost immediately, because they just cut to the chase, and they're not afraid. They don't have to be afraid to show what their life looks like now. It's just a beautiful thing to be part of and to see.
I've noticed a lot of places in Europe have really gotten on this bandwagon of memory cafes. Are they a little ahead of us?
Oh my God. Leaps and bounds.
What is that?
Memory cafes, dementia friendly communities, over in Scotland and Australia and the UK. Yeah, they're just...
Those are my listeners. They're in Australia listening to this.
Oh my gosh. They are unbelievable.
And New Zealand as well.
And they give information so graciously. And, when I go to speak, I was just putting a PowerPoint presentation together, and I always highlight, different things, because people are shocked at what is happening, because we've been fed in the U.S. that we are the leaders, and we are so far behind. And like with the Memory Cafe, when I heard about those through somebody living with dementia, Norm McNamara, he hooked me up with David Light, and David Light, they rewrote their documents. They took their S's out and put our Z's back in, and changed some of the verbiage, so it would be U.S. friendly, and didn't charge a penny. And they just, said, build them and they will come. And it was really hard to even get them off the ground here, because we are not collaborative. We think we are, but we really aren't very collaborative. And I remember talking with Mark Wortman at the Alzheimer's Disease International. And I said, oh gosh, Mark, I think I'm going to have to move, because they just don't get it here. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I can't get people to collaborate. It's just such a fight. When I first stepped into this space, it was just, I was really an odd duck. And he just started giggling, and I'm like, Mark, this isn't funny. I'm serious. And he's like, you really don't understand why? And I'm like, well, no. And he said, Lori, you guys left here to go find a world and build on independence. We have always been for the social good. And so they have government financing. They have prime ministers behind this stuff. I mean, I work on an international level with different groups as well. And it's unbelievable, the difference between here and there. And yet they're like, Lori, we still have our problems too.
Canada is like that too.
Yep.
Very, very collaborative. And I partner with the International Federation of Aging, and it has a very different feel.
Yep. And it's so nice. It's just so wonderful to see. One of the things when I started, I thought that I would, build these platforms, and instead of everyone trying to recreate their own, do like sponsorships. But I've had a really hard time getting people to buy into that. And so then they start something, but then there's turnover, and then it kind of dies off and stuff. And it's like, we could do so much more and so much better if we work together.
Well, that is for sure. So I'd like to have people find you. Your website is amazing. There's so much stuff going on. Interviews and links and all kinds of resources. Where's the best place for people to find you?
My main website is alzheimersspeaks.com, and from there they can get to the radio, they can get to the blog. In fact, if they go to the blog, I've listed the blog I just posted was about World Alzheimer's Day. And I list a ton of different resources. You can get the World Report from there, plus a lot of free and great services are listed on that. And then if you go to our initiatives and projects tab, you'll learn more about the Purple Angel, which again is something that started by Norm McNamara living with dementia over in the UK. Is just a symbol saying we are all together. It's not Alzheimer's, it's not Lewy bodies, it's just dementia, and we can do better together. And it's a symbol that just gets people asking a simple question. What is that? And then it opens the door for a conversation about dementia. And so people can use that on their checks if anybody uses those anymore. I actually put it on my mom's obituary. You know, you can use it on marketing materials. You just can't make money, sell coffee mugs and things like that, unless the funds are going back into supporting dementia, you know, 100%. And so there's things on the memory cafes there, becoming dementia friendly. I've got a bunch of short videos and kind of a history of the first one that was kicked off in Watertown, Wisconsin, and there's just lots of different things. Lots
of goodness. And when is World Dementia Day?
That was actually Saturday.
Oh, Saturday.
World Alzheimer's Day.
Alzheimer's, yeah.
And so, it was a great day, and lots of things are happening with that. And there are music festivals that are happening, you know, throughout this month. There's just, it's absolutely endless.
Oh my goodness. Well, I so appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. You are one busy woman, and I just love what you're doing, and you're giving it just your whole heart and your whole life to this, and I'm so glad that you've been recognized for it.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing. I love, you know, your title, Zestful Aging. I just think, you know, we aren't our, you know, I think of my grandma, you know, with her apron on and just kind of that homebody. And I look at I'm a grandma now, you know, and it's like, you know, it's just life has changed, and it can be full until the day we die.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the message here. Well, thank you so much, and continued good luck with all of the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you again, Nicole. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share it with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. It's no secret that everyone's feeling pretty restless and unsettled right now. Our lives are upside down, and the future is feeling pretty uncertain. But if you're anything like me, organizing my stuff can help me feel a little calmer. It's something I can do to help me feel a little more in control and in charge of my own life. If you think decluttering could help you feel better and you could use a little assistance with that, check out the online course I've developed with professional organizer and designer Carrie Luderin. It's called Too Much Stuff. And Too Much Stuff is different from other courses or articles or guidance you may have used up. We give you clear steps to deal with the clutter and the tools to help you face the overwhelming feelings and the emotions that come up when we're going through our clutter. And a lot of those emotions are just feeling anxious or guilty or just basically flooded with a lot of different confusing feelings. The course is really practical, it's realistic, the lessons are short and punchy, and they're really manageable. We're not trying to set you up for some long exploratory, super in-depth, burdensome experience. We want something really helpful for you right now. We all need help with our anxiety, so being surrounded by more calm and less chaos can really help. So now's a good time to clear out the clutter so we can focus on what's really important in our lives. So find out more at zestfulaging.com. You'll see more about this under the web courses tab. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email at zestfulaging@gmail.com. Thanks so much. And stay tuned next week for another interview with a fascinating and inspiring guest.